Travel Talk, where our expert magical memory planners discuss ways you can have fun, memorable, and stress-free family vacations. Hi, and welcome to another episode of Travel Talk. So this month, I want to talk about mobile passport control. We just came back from Turks and Caicos, and I was in Mexico earlier this year, and we had the opportunity to use mobile passport control, and very few people use it. And I figured it would be a good topic for us to talk about. Coming home from vacation, especially an international trip, you might have a very long flight, you're at the end of your vacation, hitting immigration and going through that process is not really the most fun part of the trip. And so there's basically three ways you can tackle this portion of your trip coming back into the country. So for US citizens, you can either go through the regular passport line. That is the main line that pretty much everybody is in. So it is the longest line. You can use global entry, which is something that you have to pre-plan for. So with global entry, and we have another podcast on that if you want to learn more about TSA PreCheck versus global entry. We have a great podcast on that. But just to sum it up, global entry is something that you would need to pay for, you do an interview for. It lasts for 5 years, and it's something that takes a little bit of time prior to your trip. So if you didn't have the opportunity to do that, or you don't travel internationally that often, there's several reasons why people might not have global entry. So that option is really the fastest option, but not always something that everybody has. And so that brings us to the mobile passport, which is actually available to all US citizens. It is available in most ports of entry, and it is free. And it is something that you can do really right before you go on your trip. So this is a great option to expedite your process in coming into the United States. And we just want to go over the details of that. So maybe you can see if this is a good fit for you on your next vacation. So there's basically 2 steps that you're going to go through for mobile passport. The first part you're going to want to do before your trip, and you can really do it anytime before you travel, and you will need a few things. So first of all, you're going to go to your app store on your phone, and you're going to download the mobile passport control app. It is from Border Protection Control, from CBP, which is Customs and Border Patrol. And if you look at our video or you look at our blog, you'll see an image of what this looks like. But you're going to want, it's going to say Mobile Passport Control, which is abbreviated MPC, and then it's going to be by CBP, by Customs and Border Control. So you want the official app from the government. So you're going to download that app. You're going to create an account, and you need one account really for a household. So you can have one person, one adult in your home, download the app and create the account. You'll need a password and some of those things. Then you're going to add each traveler to your account. So this is where you can add your spouse and your children, people living in the same household as you. So in order to add a traveler, you're going to need their passport, and you're going to need the traveler with you because you're also going to need to do a photo. So you're scanning the passport, you're doing the photo, you're answering a few questions. So ideally, you want to do all this prior to leaving on your vacation. It's just a little bit easier to do it when you're at home and not in an airport situation. So get that part done. There's not really a time limit of when that has to be done. It just has to be completed at some point. So you can do it a month ahead or 2 months ahead, whatever works for your schedule. You can do it the night before you leave if you need to. So once you have all your travelers added, you can look around the app, make yourself a little bit more familiar, but basically now you're set up for your return to the US. You are not going to use this on departure from the US, only when you're returning to the US. So that brings us to step 2, which is arrival in the US. This is when you come back into the US and you're preparing to go through that immigration process. So when you land in the US, as soon as you touch down, you put your phone back on, you're able to have connectivity again. You're going to complete the CBP, Customs and Border Patrol form. I like to do this right when I touch down. You have a little bit of time while you're taxiing and working your way to the gate, and it just takes a few minutes and you can kind of do it at that point. So you're going to open the app, and at the very middle section of the app, and again, we have an image of this so you can see it. It says new submission. You're going to answer some questions if you're coming in by airplane or by cruise ship, if you're the name of your arrival port. So remember, a port of entry is any way you come into the country. So it could be a cruise port or it can be an airport. See how those words all connect? So sometimes people think port of entry and then they think, well, I'm not coming on a cruise, but an airport is another port of entry. So it's going to ask for your port of entry. So that's the city or that you're coming into, and make sure you're either selecting, the airline like MIA, if you're coming into Miami, is the airport. And then there's like the Miami cruise port terminal. So you want to make sure you pick the right thing. There's some immigration questions. This is where you're kind of answering where you've been, declare what you have to declare coming into the country and those types of things. So you're going to answer all those questions. And then once you complete this and identify all the travelers that are coming in together, it will be complete and ready for the immigration officer. Now, they used to give you a QR code. They no longer do that. So the system is constantly changing. So if you've used it before and then you do it again and you don't get that QR code, don't worry. They changed that a little bit. But anyway, once you've completed that, you have a limited amount of time before you can enter on that submission. So again, I recommend doing it once you touch down. You can fill it out kind of while you're in the air and then submit it once you touch down and have access to Wi-Fi again or some type of data signal, because you can enter information. It just can't be transmitted until you have signal again. So it's not something you need to do like before takeoff unless you have a super short flight. So, something you want to do once you land, but before you get to the immigration line. So then as you get off the plane, use the restroom, start heading to immigration. As you're approaching immigration, especially if there's a couple flights coming in, they'll be giving directions, but where you're going to look for is that mobile passport line. So most people will be heading to the regular immigration line for passports for US citizens. Some people will be peeling off and going to the global entry line. You are going to be looking for the mobile passport line. Get in that line. You're going to still show your passport. None of mobile passport eliminates the use of carrying your passport. I should be very clear on that. You still need to carry a physical passport at all times. You will need it on entry to a foreign country. You will need it on entry back to the United States. It's just that a lot of the documentation that they do when you hand them your passport is done in the app. So you still need your physical passport and the app for using mobile passport control, okay? It doesn't eliminate carrying the passport. So once you get into the mobile passport line, it will move very quickly because most of it has been completed in the app. You'll get up to the immigration officer, present your physical passport, and they will finish your immigration processing and off you go to customs. So it will go faster. Sometimes you'll see a long line there, but it will go faster than the regular line because they've already completed many of the steps in the app that they would normally do once you get to the desk. So just keep that in mind. All right, so not all ports of entry do accept the mobile passport. So you can go to the CBP website and see a list of the locations that accept mobile passport. You'll definitely want to check that before you travel. Currently, there are 33 international airports in the United States that do accept it. And some of the biggest ones that people are coming into, Miami and Charlotte, which are huge connection points. A lot of people coming into the US have a connection through Miami or Charlotte if they don't have a nonstop flight to their home airport. So they're accepted there. They're JFK, Newark, Philadelphia, Orlando. So many of the large airports take mobile passports. So like I said, there's 33 of them, especially the ones that are the main ports of entry for coming into the United States. There are actually some other locations that accept mobile passport because in some locations you pre-clear customs. The Bahamas is one of those, for example. So the airport in Nassau, which is NAS, does a pre-clearance for the United States. And so you can use mobile passport at NAS to do your pre-clearance, and then you come into the United States. And so again, you can check the CBP website, and they will give you a list of all the locations where it is accepted, including airports and cruise ports and pre-clearance locations, which are actually outside the United States. So that is a good resource that you'll want to look at. So a few other tips when we're talking about global entry. when we're talking about mobile passport. And this relates to global entry. So if you are in the process of getting your global entry, there is an option that is called enrollment on arrival. So with global entry, first you fill out all your paperwork and everything on the computer and you get conditionally approved. And then you have to go for an interview. So you can either do that interview at an airport at any time, you make an appointment and you go, or you can do that final interview on your arrival back to the United States. So that final clearance is done. We just did this and learned a few things. So in that scenario where you're going to do that final interview on arrival for global entry, before you do the interview, you do not go straight to the global entry line for that first time. Before you go to the interview, you first have to clear immigration normally. So you either have to go through the regular immigration line for passports or the mobile passport line. But you have to do that first prior to getting your interview. Lesson learned when we did it. So if you are doing that interview on arrival, then you can still use mobile passport. You might want to do that just that one time, just to be sure that you get through that quickly. And then you can do your interview and then you can go, because adding the interview does take extra time. There's fingerprinting and questions and photos and these other processes. So after you clear customs, you go to a second line and then you do that interview process. And so you want to make sure that you get through that first process as quickly as possible. The second tip that I have is that, the mobile passport process is expanding and changing regularly. As I mentioned, that used to be a QR code and now it's not a QR code anymore. So every time you use mobile passport, even if it's your second or your third time and you have the app and you kind of know what you're doing, I would just recommend checking the CBP website one more time, double check that nothing has changed and that there's anything that you have to do differently. And again, when you go through the process of doing your mobile passport, you don't want to be confused if something looks a little different, because it does change from time to time. And the other thing is, if you're making a connection, you're always going to go through immigration on that first port of entry. So if you're flying to somewhere in Pittsburgh or the middle of the United States, and you're coming back from Cancun and you're connecting through Miami, you're going to go through all of that immigration process in Miami, collect your bags, go back through TSA a second time in Miami, and then board your connecting flight. And that is why you have those longer connection times. And it does take a little bit of time. But using the mobile passport can be amazing, especially combined with TSA PreCheck, to help those connections go smoothly and quickly. So you have less chance of missing your connecting flight and a better chance of maybe getting a bite to eat because it's a long travel day. So you're definitely going to want to use mobile passport control if you have that connecting flight, because you're going to have to do that on that first port of entry into the United States. So it's going to save you some time. So overall, immigration and customs and coming back into the United States after a fantastic trip abroad can be one of the most frustrating or time-consuming or tiring processes getting back after your vacation, something most people don't really look forward to. But we really recommend using the mobile passport app from the Customs and Border Patrol as a great way to speed that up, make things go smoothly, and help your reentry be a little bit easier.